Good morning, beautiful Pensic people. My name is Amy Sparrow. I am a Laurel that hails from the Kingdom of Atlantia. And this morning, we're going to be talking about magical beliefs and amulets for Anglo-Saxons. So what's this class about? This class is about the bags of items worn by Anglo-Saxon women who use the contents of those bags to perform magic. These women were known as cunning women. Men did not appear to have performed magic, though they did have small bits of magic of their own attached to swords, such as beads. So how do we know about Anglo-Saxon magic? The Dark Ages, which are now referred to as the early Middle Ages, were not well documented. However, we have multiple types of sources available to us. We have books of healing spells translated into Old English. We have grave finds. We have Christian sermons against the pagan practices of Anglo-Saxons. And we have laws against pagan practices. While we do not have direct evidence from the Anglo-Saxons about their own belief, we do have these indirect sources. So first, let's talk about the ring pouch, which is the pouch that women carried their magic in. It could be hung from the waist. Amulets could also be worn around the neck or hung from a belt. The purse on the slide is made from a metal macrame ring with linen whip stitched to the ring itself. And there's a black and white image of a find, and the ring is only 3 inches across. There have been grave finds of metal rings, ivory rings, and rings made from the base of stag antlers. It's also conjectured that there were wooden rings, but those would have rotted away in the graves. A video on how to make a ring pouch can be found at the link on the slide. Note, it is a video by Sally Pointer, who said she was inspired by Anglo-Saxon ring pouches, but her pouch is much bigger than we have evidence for. And if you take into account that that ring, that grave find, is 3 inches wide, think about how small your hand would have to be to get into that pouch. So there is some conjecture that people didn't stick their hands in the pouches to get things out. They would upend the pouch to get the magic out. So what is an amulet? An amulet is an object that can help you prevent evil influence or bad luck, or it helps you perform a positive outcome, such as healing or good luck. An amulet is not burnt or swallowed or consumed. Anything that is burnt, swallowed, or consumed is considered medicine, and we're not talking about medicine today. An item that overlaps with amulets is the concept of a curing stone. A curing stone is a special amulet which is dipped in water and imparts its magic into the water. Then the water is consumed by the person, but the magical stone is kept and the magic is renewed automatically, apparently. So what types of amulets were important to the Anglo-Saxons? This class leans heavily on the academic work of Audrey Meany in her work, Anglo-Saxon Amulets and Curing Stones, which is published in 1981. She's the only person who seems to have studied Anglo-Saxon magic in an extensive manner. She breaks amulets into 5 different groups: vegetable, mineral, animal, manufactured, and found. This class follows her categorizations. We're going to talk very quickly about vegetable amulets. When Meany says vegetable, she does not mean a vegetable like tomatoes or cucumbers. She means plants that are found in the wild, used to cure an illness or a curse, or perform some positive outcome. In this class, we're interested in objects found in Anglo-Saxon burials, specifically in what would have been found in a pouch. Since plants usually don't last in burials, especially in English soil, our talk about plant amulets will be brief. I have published an extensive list of plants and their charms for Meany's book in the summer newsletter for the Kingdom of Atlantia Foresters Guild, and the link is on the slide. First, let's talk about castor oil. It was used to ward off hail and tempest, bad weather. So if you hang its seed on your house, it's going to ward off bad weather, or you can use it on a ship and it will quieten every tempest. And then Apuleius has a spell here saying, plant rincinum, I pray that you be present at my singing, and that you ward off hails and lightnings and all tempests. Sweet clover is another plant that we have a spell for. It's collected in August, and then you tie the root around your neck with a string. Note that mentions of string occur a lot in spells because weaving is considered magical. Then we have periwinkle. We have a lot of spells about periwinkle, and it's going to help you against devil sicknesses, adders, wild animals, poisons, and every kind of threat. So it's pretty and magical at the same time. A final note about vegetable amulets. Throughout Meany's chapter on vegetable amulets, she talks about seed pods, oak galls, or other plant matter which may once have been part of a necklace or kept in a waste pouch. Unfortunately, these discussions are accompanied with the phrase, no longer economic. That's a fancy way of saying they don't exist anymore in the museum collections. Now, note that Meany was reporting about grave digs in the pre-1970s, and at that time, vegetable matter was not considered critical to the understanding of a site or a culture. So if anybody had found plant material, they didn't collect it. So moving on, we're going to talk about mineral amulets, which are rocks. Some examples are amber, agates, amethyst, quartz, crystal, and pyrite. We're going to talk about the laws against magic stones, and then we're going to talk about Anglo-Saxon beliefs about rocks. Now, note, amber is not a rock, it's petrified tree sap, but Meany puts it in the rock category, so that's where I'm going to talk about it. Let's look at a law against magic stones. In Icelandic law, written about 920, we have text that says, people shall not have stones about them or fill them with magic power in order to tie on people or on people's cattle. If people put trust in stones to ensure their own health or that of cattle, the penalty is minor outlawry. However, some stones appear to have been sanctified by their church for use because people would not give up their pagan practices entirely. So religion is influencing pagan laws or pagan practices in localized areas. Maybe some local priests thought, if I can get people to come to the church by blessing their magic stones and ignoring the fact that they're still using them, I'm going to do that. Whereas other priests may prohibit the use of stones entirely. It's just like religion today. It depends on where you live and what church you go to, what practices are being allowed or disallowed. Amber. The Anglo-Saxons thought that amber was a stone. Again, we know it's petrified tree sap. Europeans contemporary with Anglo-Saxons believe it protected against witchcraft, head pains, and skin eruptions, and tonsillitis. Amber is the most frequently found mineral in Anglo-Saxon graves, and it's found in many different configurations on necklaces and amulet strings. It had great value, and we can tell this because a cracked bead has been found with drilling holes in each side, so it could be held together with thongs. So amber is not something that you would just toss away even if you broke it. The earliest amber has been found in a 5th century grave as a sword bead, and it is most frequently found in 6th century graves, which are early pagan graves. Jet is a type of coal. It's petrified wood, and it's lightweight compared to other stones. Jet is found locally in Great Britain. It is found in 6th and 7th century graveyards. And the contemporaries of Anglo-Saxons on the continent believed that it protected against thunder, poison, snakes, witchcraft, and attacks from elves. Jet is hard to carve without shattering, yet the Anglo-Saxons made beads and spindle whorls out of it. There's no admonitions from early clergy against jet, which means the church did not consider it evil. Amethyst, which is very pretty, is a lilac-colored quartz. It's found in 7th century Christian graves. An amulet of the Christian religion is worn in bishops' rings. It's not frequently found, and the greatest distribution is in Kent. It's not buried with men, and it can also be found at Roman sites. Anglo-Saxons that converted to Christianity often wore pear-shaped amulet beads strung on necklaces with other beads. Quartz is concentrated light and fire magic, which helps with healing. It was made into both faceted and smooth beads. It's been found at 50 sites, some as early as the 5th century. It was made into beads and spindle whorls. It's difficult to find in England. Bands of metal were wrapped around smooth quartz crystal orbs, which were worn as necklaces or from girdles. We see this practiced by the Vikings too, which are later in time period. Smooth crystal quartz was often associated with sieve spoons. These are small spoons with holes in them, but no one knows why. They may have been used only ceremonially in sipping wine, and it's a status symbol that says, I am the lady of the house. Note, please note, the practice of crystal ball reading didn't happen until the 14th century. So if you're playing an Anglo-Saxon, please don't try to read your crystal ball orbs. Quartz may have been considered a thunderstone, which is a stone that is descended from heaven during a storm, and therefore it will prevent lightning strikes. White stones and lumps of quartz have been reported in prehistoric burials in Britain, the Isle of Man, and Ireland from the Stone Age onwards. Nobody knows why. And if you watch the archaeological show out of Great Britain called Time Team, they talk about this a lot. Chalk beads are found more frequently where chalk is available, obviously. They were made into beads and spindle whorls and have been found in 6th century cemeteries. Cuttlefish bone may have also been used for white beads. Cuttlefish bone looks a lot like chalk. Chalk beads offer protection for children, and they were used on swords as well. Now let's talk about some miscellaneous stones. Stones with natural holes in them are considered magical. They protect against witches and nightmares, and modernly we call these stones hagstones. Pyrite nodules were thought to be thunderstones, so they were put in one's houses as protection against lightning. Pyrite was buried in graves so that the dead would have the means to make fire in the next world. However, iron pyrite occurs naturally in chalk beds. So in a chalk bed burial, it would be hard to know if the nodule was put in there on purpose or if it just was part of the surrounding chalk that was dug out for the grave. One instance of manganese has also been found in a grave on an iron ring, and the meaning is unfortunately unclear. Here is a sample grave contents listing involving stones. This sort of puts you on the spot with the archaeologist, which is why I included it here. A woman's grave in Iceland contained a little heap of bluish clay-like stuff. And in this burial, some dark stones, and with or on top of this stuff, a few iron fragments of no recognizable shape between the right hip bone and the lowest vertebrae. Another pile containing some insignificant iron fragments, a small semi-transparent stone with a hole in it like a bead, a small snail shell, and two peculiar stones, one gray and oval, shaped with a hole in it like a tiny loom weight. So that puts you right in with the archaeologist looking at what was uncovered in one woman's grave. Let's turn now to animal amulets. When we turn to animal amulets, we enter a very primitive world. Many, if not most, of those amulets employed by the early Anglo-Saxons have been used from the Paleolithic onwards. The same is true of animal fossils, which have therefore been placed in this chapter, even though their material is mineral. Wolf hair and fossil shark teeth. There's a spell from De Vriend. If you see a wolf's trap before he sees you, then he will not harm you. If you have with you on your journey hair from the wolf's back and from the tip of the wolf's tail, without fear, you will perform your journey, but the wolf will be anxious about his journey. In local folklore, shark's teeth were known as serpent's tongue. At the time of Meany's book, only one shark's tooth had been found in an Anglo-Saxon grave. Here's some really cool animal fossils. These are mine. I bought them off of Etsy. Note, Etsy is a great place when you're trying to find weird animal type stuff and amulets. So you don't have to go out and find your own fossil sea urchins yourself. So let's talk about fossil belemnites. They are from an extinct order of squid-like cephalopods that existed in the late Triassic. They were known as elf arrows or thunderbolts, because that's what they look like. They are fossil points the size of a human thumb, and they were used as protection against lightning. Note, there's a lot of stuff that was used against protection of lightning. Fossil ammonites are marine mollusks. Since they look like coiled snakes, they were called snake stones, and they were thought to be an antidote for a snake bite. Meany doesn't say exactly how they were used as an amulet against snake bite. They could have been used as a curing stone. I don't know if they were applied directly to the snake bite, but there you go. Fossil sea urchins were also called thunderstones and were kept in homes as a charm against lightning. They were also kept in dairies to prevent milk from going sour. These fossils were found frequently in Anglo-Saxon graves. Then you have fossil sponges. These have round dots on them. and they were kept in homes to prevent nightmares. No one knows why Anglo-Saxons liked cowrie shells, but they did. Some cultures think that cowrie looks like a half-opened eye, and so it's a charm against the evil eye. Since cowrie shells are most often buried with women, archaeologists think that the Anglo-Saxons believe they helped with fertility because the shell resembles female genitalia. Cowrie shells are still found on the Yorkshire coast. Teeth. Teeth are kind of strange and laden with a lot of magic. Horses' teeth were amulets to help babies cut teeth. Though there is documentary evidence only for a baby amulet, horses were considered a shaman's steed, and teeth were buried in adult graves. Since there was a serious horse cult in Great Britain during the Anglo-Saxon culture, a single tooth might have been a stand-in for an entire sacrificed horse that would help the deceased transport from this world to the next. A single tooth also could have been a stand-in for many teeth, not just the horse skeleton. Ox teeth may have helped transport the dead to the next world. There is no evidence of an ox cult in Great Britain, but there was an ox cult in Germany, which may have been brought to Great Britain in some version during the migration. Dental health was of paramount importance to the Anglo-Saxons. Beaver teeth are some of the hardest teeth in the animal world. The Anglo-Saxons would have recognized this and sought to impart the teeth into their own children. Teeth and tusks. A wolf's tooth can be tied on a child to keep away night terrors. It can also be used as a hunting charm. There is a cure listed for herpes of the hand, whatever that is, in Ball's Leech book. Catch a fox, strike off the canine tooth while it is alive, and let it run away. Bind the tooth in a fawn skin and have it on you. Boar tusks can be worn as amulets for fertility and ferocity, though archaeologists do not know which gender wore tusks. Antlers and claws. Stag antler beads may have been used for protection and power when they were attached to swords. Stag antlers were tied to horses and oxen to keep them disease-free, since stags renewed their antlers once a year, much like a snake sheds its skin. It was a symbol of rebirth and immortality. Now, I think that this was probably a bad edit in Meany's book when she said stag antlers were tied to horses and oxen. I think she probably meant stag antler beads were tied to horses and oxen, because I cannot see a horse or an ox suffering having an entire antler tied to their body somewhere. I just don't see that as plausible. But I wasn't there. Who knows? I'm just going to say that probably it was stag antler beads tied to the animals. Eagle claws were worn to prevent pain. Only 4 claws have been found at the time of Meany's publication, and they may be underrepresented in grave finds because they disintegrate in soil if the conditions are right. If a real claw could not be obtained, then they may be carved from bone or stone. The reason that Meany thinks eagle claws were worn to prevent pain is one of the burials had a woman who had a very arthritic hip, and the eagle claw was found near her hip in the burial. Let's move on to manufactured amulets. There are objects which appear to have been made as amulets, for example, models of weapons, shields, buckets, and tools, and also those glass beads and whorls and rings which bear the design which bear a design which may protect it against the evil eye. I never knew before I did this research that miniature buckets were a thing, but they are. A lot of them are found on the continent, but some have been found in Great Britain as well. In many graves in Great Britain and the continent, there have been models of tools which were hung around the neck or the waist. They might have been meant as protection, but without any documentation, we can only guess. These tools and weapons have been found in men's, women's, and children's graves. And there's a sample in the photo below. I put my tape measure on the image so that you could see exactly how small they were, about 1.5 to 2 inches long. They had spears, hammers, knives, sifting spoons, iron shears, axes, shields, bill hooks, and buckets. Here is a drawing of some of the buckets that have been found. The purpose of these miniature buckets made from bronze sheet metal is unknown. The fabric and the thread found in these buckets seems to have been amuletic. Rolled wads of material have been found inside these buckets, which were only 3/8 of an inch by 3/8 of an inch. Textile fragments have been found in buckets. Thread has been found in buckets, and all manner of textiles. But buckets are so small that none of the textiles could have been useful, and that's why they're believed to have been amuletic. Knot rings were found in 6th and 7th century women's graves. Knot rings were made to confuse the evil eye because the person giving the evil eye got lost in the swirls of the knots of the rings. Gold rings were used to cure eye problems, and we know this because we have an 8th century sermon against using gold rings. Apparently, if you use a gold ring to try to cure yourself, you are sinning greatly. Iron has been used against evil spirits. We know this. And all who place a ring and iron bracelets to be worn on his body or place in his house something of iron in order that demons may be frightened, and iron nails beneath the bed of a demoniac and thinks to expel the demon from a man by means of this magic are not Christian, but pagan. Spangles. This was a new find for me. I usually do late period garb, and spangles are something that's used a lot in late period garb. Very rich people. I didn't know that Anglo-Saxons also made spangles. They're a different kind of spangle, but spangles are little pieces of bronze sheet metal in this period, and they were often triangular in shape. There's some drawings of grave finds there. Sometimes there was a punch design on the spangle. These spangles were often attached to a hairpin. Spangles were also reused as earrings or necklaces or attached pouches. It is possible that the spangles were attached to ring pouches. If they had been attached to ring pouches, they would have taken on an amuletic quality of their own. Keys are a holdover from Roman times. Anglo-Saxons appear to have borrowed the idea of keys from the Romans as a symbol of a woman being in charge of her house. Anglo-Saxons did not have Roman houses in the way that Romans did, so the Anglo-Saxon keys appear to be less functional and more symbolic, even though they were still hung from a woman's belt. Work boxes or relic boxes. It's on my list to make one of these. At the time of Meany's book, 36 work boxes had been found in graves. They were small metal tubes made of bronze sheet metal suspended from a belt by a chain or a loop. and they held organic materials such as thread or fabric. Though the fabric may have been offcuts from a garment, there was not enough fabric or thread for the contents of the box to be useful. Workbox number 1 on the right appears to have had needles in it because of the scratch marks found. And workboxes with no lid appeared to have been closed by small pieces of fabric. There is actually a color photo of image number 1, workbox number 1 in one of the books, but I couldn't find it in time for this presentation. And the color photo is from a later work that's looking at this type of relic. Magic was worked into fabric and thread. Much of what we know about Anglo-Saxon magic practices is through the church's admonitions against the practices. Meany lists 3 different passages prohibiting weaving magic into cloth. One of them is from Eligius of Noyon, who preached that a woman should not name other unfortunate persons either at the loom or in dyeing or in any kind of work with textiles. Presumably, the idea was that the maledictions were made more powerful by being, as it were, woven into cloth. So if we look at the small pieces of fabric and thread kept in workboxes, it could be that they were considered magic for either healing or curses. Found amulets. I'm using a quote from Meany because she says it better than I could. When we pick up some natural object or acquire some antique trinket and preserve it among our treasures, it is often because of some indefinable quality which attracts us. When Anglo-Saxons took with them to the grave something from a previous era, they must surely have been moved by a similar impulse. And I liken this to walking on the beach and picking up a beautiful shell or stone, taking a hike in the woods and picking up something that you find along the trail. Many of us have magpie-like tendencies, and we want to pick up pretty or interesting stuff and keep it with us. And the Anglo-Saxons, being humans, were no different. Let's talk about some old beads. Roman trinkets were sought after because they were found near ancient stone buildings, and anything ancient was special. And for those of you who haven't studied history as much, the Romans came before the Anglo-Saxons. They occupied Great Britain for a few hundred years, and they left their buildings when they left Great Britain. So there was a time when the Anglo-Saxons, who had become Britanized, if you will, lived in the fallen down stone Roman buildings. But after a time, even those buildings sort of disintegrated. So you have Anglo-Saxons coming around hundreds of years after the Romans left and would just pick up stuff at these old ancient Roman sites. Dark blue glass beads were of Iron Age manufacture. Melon beads of pale blue or turquoise were of Roman manufacture. And clear green glass beads found in later 6th century graves were probably Anglo-Saxon manufacture. Anne Meany says we must assume that beads of all kinds would have been regarded in the same way, that is, if some of them were magic. Think about it at the time, you're basically taking sand and some other mixtures and turning them into this gorgeous, beautiful, tiny thing. That is a magical process. Let's talk about spindle whorls. Larger beads, most likely of Roman manufacture, were used as toggles or spindle whorls. We have evidence that they were regarded as having powers from the Leech Book. For cheek disease, take the whorl, which a woman spins with, Bind it on his neck with a woolen thread and rinse within with hot goat's milk. It will be well for him. Bronze coins and iron nails. Coins are the most common bound amulet. The pagan English did not use coins for money, but they used them as jewelry. Coins were pierced or loops were added so that they could be strung on a necklace. Many believes that the coins were used as amulets because they were kept with other amulets, but their meaning and purpose was unclear. Iron nails were also picked up from Roman ruins and placed under beds to expel demons. We talked about the use of iron earlier. Flint arrowheads in Europe were thought to be the work of elves or fairies. Although no flint arrowheads have been found in Anglo-Saxon graves, worked pieces of flint have been found. There is a possibility that worked flint flakes were used to instigate weather magic, such as creating hail or storms. Weather makers were condemned by church councils from the late 7th to early 9th centuries in Gaul. Something old. In the collection of magical assemblages held together in a pouch, usually there was something old, an object being at least 100 years older than the person buried. These items, to our modern eyes, appear to be useless bric-a-brac. Bronze strap ends from belts, knife handles without blades, broken late Roman belt plates, ring brooches, Roman keys, Roman D-shaped buckles, pinless brooches, and broken pieces of Roman glass. The meaning of these objects is unclear. They may have been curiosities, or they may have been special magical items that worked for the woman who carried them around. They may have been used in divination if the entire pouch of amulets was upended on the ground. So we've come to the end, and I'm going to talk about Meany's research conclusions. Ethelred's Sixth Code prohibited witches, magicians, and sorcerers, which means that authorities believed that these persons existed. The quote from the code is, "And if witches or sorcerers, magicians or prostitutes, murderers or perjurers are found anywhere in the land, they shall be zealously driven out of this land." Meany concludes that the collections of objects found in Anglo-Saxon women's graves must have been used in magical practices such as divination or healing. The women who possessed them were the cunning women of the tribe. It is also possible that the contents of the Anglo-Saxon women's bags were used in white witchcraft, that is, in a healing ritual. In the 8th century Continental homily against superstition, to put iron rings on a patient's body to expel demons was regarded as pagan practice. A piece of broken glass could perhaps have been used for scarification, as a lens in cauterization, or along with any of the other objects have been dipped in water to make a powerful medicine. What are the Scadian conclusions? What does this mean for those of us who want to recreate the life of an Anglo-Saxon? Well, if you're recreating a male persona, it means very little. From the grave finds, it seems that carrying amulets was regarded as women's purview. If you're recreating a female persona, it means that you can have a bag of magical treasures at your waist. These treasures include a subset of the items discussed in this presentation: beads, coins, glass, broken jewelry, animal teeth, stones, metal rings, and wire work rings. Based on the spells concerning plants in early medieval literature, you could also have plant amulets in your bag. Here's the bibliography. You can pause your video presentation and take notes from this. And I want to thank you for watching this class. For more costume videos, you can see my YouTube channel listed here. I thank you for coming to Penzic University. I have enjoyed teaching you today, and I hope you go forth and make some magic as an Anglo-Saxon. Bye-bye.